Hi, everyone. It's Monday. Welcome to CBC News BC. I'm Benit Brach. We're here in the Vancouver newsroom, and here's what we are following today. We're going to start in Surrey, where a 6-year-old girl has died and 2 other children have been injured after being hit by a vehicle in the Fraser Heights neighborhood. It happened yesterday afternoon at the intersection of 164th Street and 108th Avenue. Police say the driver of a pickup truck hit the 3 children and then drove away. The 2 surviving kids, age 16 and 7, were taken to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries.
We've identified the children. We've had to deliver some very sad, unfortunate, and tragic news. I can tell you, not only is this a family's worst nightmare, this is a police officer's worst nightmare as well.
Police found and arrested the driver less than an hour later after the suspect reportedly crashed into a parked vehicle in the Newton area. Police are still trying to figure out what caused the collision, but say alcohol may have been a factor. Surrey Schools says it is prioritizing the well-being and emotional support of staff and students. Counselors are on site to help, and it says their hearts are with the members impacted by the loss. Now, today also marks a somber anniversary in BC. It's been 9 years since the province declared the toxic drug crisis a public health emergency. Since then, thousands of people have died from illicit drugs. The First Nations Health Authority says more than 420 First Nation people died from toxic drug poisoning last year. And while that is a 7% drop from the year before, the agency says First Nations people are still disproportionately being killed by toxic drugs.
Harm reduction from a First Nations lens is more than keeping people safer when using substances. It really means getting to those root wounds that people turn to cope, how they might draw on substances. And really it's undoing those harms of colonialism, which put First Nations people at higher risk.
The agency says initiatives like take-home naloxone programs have saved at least 39% of estimated deaths. Going forward, there will be launching a new campaign that focuses on providing resources for young people. And police say 22 suspects have been arrested and numerous weapons have been seized after a 2-day police bust at Metrotown. Burnaby RCMP say they seized thousands of dollars worth of stolen items between March 13th and 14th. Police say they found 2 different 16-year-old boys carrying around bear spray, one of which also had a pellet gun. On another occasion, they found a 30-year-old man who had a hunting knife, bear spray, several break-in tools, numerous stolen items, and drugs on him. Police say the initiative was aimed at curbing shoplifting and violence crimes in an effort to enhance public safety and also support businesses. It's also Tsunami Preparedness Week. BC has seen a series of recent earthquakes, and that might give you more reason to prepare for a possible natural disaster. Now, Emergency Management Minister Kelly Green says those quakes didn't present a tsunami risk, but residents need to still be prepared. A tsunami can reach the shore in minutes, or it could take hours. So Green says knowing what to do ahead of time can really help make that difference. Okay, and you are updated this afternoon. You're watching CBC News BC. BC Today is coming up next.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Well, today marks 9 years since BC declared a public health emergency over toxic drug deaths. There is a rally right now outside the BC legislature. The number of deaths has declined somewhat, but the debate over harm reduction and mandatory treatment continues. Do you see any progress in curbing toxic drug deaths? That's up first. At 12:30, golfer Rory McIlroy won the Masters tournament this weekend. What do you love about the game, and how do you handle the mental part of golf? We'll take your calls. I'm Michelle Elliott. Welcome to BC Today. In 2016, BC declared deaths caused by toxic illicit drugs like fentanyl to be a public health emergency. Since then, more than 15,000 people have died, and the crisis has continued now for 9 years as of today. But are things taking a turn? There has been a slight decline in the number of deaths, and this past January marked the 4th month where that number fell below 150. Still, unregulated toxic drugs remains the leading cause of unnatural death in BC for those aged 10 to 59. We're going to hear from people who work in the field, including the First Nations Health Authority in a moment. We also want to hear from you. 9 years into the public health emergency, do you see any progress? And what direction does BC need to take now? You can call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. If you'd like to email us, it's bctoday@cbc.ca. Bob Hughes joins me now, Executive Director at Ask Wellness Society, which provides outreach services in Penticton. Bob, good afternoon. Thanks for being with us.
Good afternoon, Michelle.
What do you take from the recent trends and numbers that we've been seeing that show a slight decline in toxic drug deaths?
I mean, I think I kind of equate it to just, a break in the clouds where you get a glimmer of sun and start to have some hope that the brighter days are ahead. I think, as you just described in the opening, I mean, these are very, very modest trends that we're seeing in terms of a reduction in fatal overdoses. But I can say, as somebody who's been in the field for 25 plus years and obviously been on the front lines for the last 9 years of this terrible crisis, that it's as recent as Thursday with the passing of a young woman in Penticton as a result of toxic drug supply, that it's definitely not over. And while we can breathe a bit of a sigh of relief that the direction potentially is turning on a longer term level, there's still a tremendous amount of harm happening, and clearly, strategies that just aren't seeing the dramatic change we need to see happen.
What do you make of the strategies that BC has taken on? Things like safer supply and supervised consumption sites. What's working and what's not in your mind?
Well, I think there's, without a doubt, when this emerged, and it was quite a rapid realization across the province that something had changed, and it was really evident that it was the supply of drugs in the community was at the heart of what was leading to this toxic drug supply crisis. And we responded as a province with an extensive arsenal of harm reduction strategies. And I would argue that was vitally needed to begin the distribution of naloxone beyond just simply in a medical setting. I mean, this response and continues to be the response that's needed to deal with the most urgent catastrophe that we face. But I think what we've been very slow to do provincially is to create an integrated strategy, one that includes treatment and enforcement and vitally prevention. And I've spoken before about the need for the 4 pillars to be resuscitated as a universal strategy. And I still firmly believe that we need a multitude of pillars to be able to tackle this crisis. Recently, the province invested in accessible treatment programming. They've described the road to recovery, but we haven't really seen that translating on the ground into an integrated strategy in a way that we would hope for. I know that, some program, it's the addition of supported recovery and treatment beds has been vital. We've seen the value of employment being attached to recovery, but I still think we have so far to go to integrate harm reduction to treatment and recovery that it is a great polarity that is frankly a tragedy in our province, that we haven't found a way to bring people together to see both of these pillars are vital in order to try to help people make the leap from being, on the street in accessing harm reduction. How do we impart the importance of engaging in healthcare and social supports, that it becomes an imperative for people to participate in their wellness, and to create a system that integrates harm reduction with supported recovery and treatment.
Bob Hughes is my guest, the executive director of the Ask Wellness Society that provides outreach services in Penticton. And we're asking you, 9 years into BC's public health emergency over toxic drugs, do you see any progress? And what direction does BC need to take now? You can call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. Cody is joining us from Cranbrook. Hi, Cody.
Hello, how are you?
I am fine. What do you think of where we are at with this crisis?
I think we're kind of almost going backwards. It's really unfortunate. So I'm in Cranbrook, and I work at a place that's close to where a lot of homeless people and users have set up their camps. And I've unfortunately been a witness to a number of fatalities, as well as one where I came across the scene like right off the bat and performed CPR on the individual with a couple of people's help, and unfortunately weren't able to save the person. Also my little brother passed away from a accidental fentanyl overdose, right? Didn't know what he was getting. This was several years ago. But all I see is just like a real lack of caring. And the general public, they just want the problem to go away and disappear. They don't want it in their backyard, even with like homeless shelters or treatment centers or safe injection sites or whatever. Everybody seems to be all aboard for that, but nobody wants it in their backyard. So I'm just going to caution everybody. So if it's not happening in your backyard, tomorrow it might be happening in your house. And the RCMP, I've got a lot of support for the RCMP, but they seem very jaded. They don't seem to want to really address these issues. Quick story. I'll make this because I know I'm taking up your time. Anyway, so the person that I gave CPR to, just a week before that, it was in the same location. There was a young woman, and she was obviously overdosing. I didn't have a naloxone kit on me. I do carry them in my truck now. But I was in a drive-through lineup to get my lunch, and I had made the call literally 5 minutes before that, and there was an RCMP officer in his car waiting for his lunch, and I could look over and see this person suffering, and there was nobody doing anything. And so I just think it's just all a lot of talk. And the last thing I'll say is that the police or the government or whoever does whatever they do, they need to get on organized crime. These people are murderers and killers. Even if all they're doing is selling a pill or a powder or whatever form it comes in, I don't know. But if they're not going, there needs to be some serious changes happening with these people. They need to be I'm not a conservative, but I like Poilievre's concept of throwing these people away and putting them in jail for life because they are murderers. Anyway, so I'll stop it there. That's just my opinion.
Cody,
I'll let you go.
thank you very much for your call, and I'm really sorry for your loss and what you've been through with this, trying to save someone as well whom you observed was going through an overdose. Bob, you mentioned, and he's talked there about recovery homes. It's sort of like when the rubber hits the road, do people really want these in their backyard? But I just want to wrap with you. When you mentioned prevention, and you mentioned that a young woman had just died from fentanyl in Penticton. When you look at prevention, like what's been missing then for young people?
I mean, I think that it was such a rapid transformation in our community in 2016 when then Minister Lake, declared a public health emergency that, our real only arsenal was a harm reduction approach, which made sense. But I don't think that we've really looked at, as they say, a framework like at the 4 pillars that does look at what would we be doing to prevent the uptake of fentanyl or the opiate, street level opiate, within the younger population in workplaces where people are potentially going to work feeling tremendous pain and trying to access medications to support that pain. The prevention messaging that was desperately needed needs to be in workplaces. It needs to be in the medical realm as well, in terms of preventing people being able to access opiates and then finding themselves drifting into addiction. So I think that each of these pillars is a valuable way to tackle this issue. And when it comes to Cody's description, people's level of fatigue is based on the fact that they're not seeing change. And I do think that across the province that people are inherently compassionate and willing to support people that are suffering. But when we're seeing it just happening over and over again daily on our streets, people do get jaded, they get frustrated. And I think that we need to be able to be celebrating some of the successes that we see in the recovery world. We need to be able to, as pointed out by Cody, see the results of the courts tackling people who are trafficking in fentanyl and seeing it as an elevated criminal behavior that requires a commensurate a response from a criminal justice perspective.
Okay.
People need to see results to feel that there's something worthy to do.
Bob, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate speaking to you on this somber anniversary. Thank you.
Take care.
You too. Bob Hughes, Executive Director at Ask Wellness Society in Penticton. It's 12:19 now. This is BC Today. During federal elections, the Canada Elections Act obliges CBC Radio to make airtime available for purchase by all registered political parties. Now, of course, not all parties will exercise their right to buy time, and as a result, listeners may only hear advertising on behalf of some parties, even though the airtime is equally available to all parties. So over the coming weeks, you may hear on our show political advertising during our programming, which may sound a little different since we don't normally air ads on CBC Radio 1. And this airtime is made available for messages provided by registered political parties as required by the Canada Elections Act.
A lot of us really don't want Pierre Poilievre to win this election. But the more I hear about Mark Carney, the more I worry. He's planning tax cuts for the rich and health care cuts for the rest of us. Here's the thing. We know we can count on the NDP. They've always fought for us, and we need them in Ottawa more than ever. Canada works best when the NDP's there. We just gotta vote for them. Authorized by the registered agent for the New Democratic Party of Canada.
The proceeding was a paid political advertisement. This is BC Today here on CBC. I'm Michelle Elliott. Thanks so much for being with us this afternoon. It's 12:21 now, and we're taking your calls on this somber 9-year anniversary of the public health emergency. And this is over the toxic illicit drugs in BC. We're asking you, do you see any progress in terms of the numbers that we are seeing, some reduction in the number of deaths, a moderate one, a slight reduction, but do you see progress in that? What steps do you think BC should take now? Call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, or you can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. We are going to continue this after the news update at 12:30 as well, so we will get to your calls. Joining me now is Dr. Nel Wieman, the Chief Medical Officer for the First Nations Health Authority. Dr. Wieman, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, and thanks for having me, Michelle.
Thank you for joining us. You held a press conference this morning. Can you take me through the numbers as you see them? Where do you see some improvements and what is still concerning?
Great, thanks for that. So this morning, the First Nations Health Authority did hold a press event, which we shared the numbers of toxic drug poisoning deaths and events for the year 2024, so last year. So we found last year that 427 First Nations people across BC died from a toxic drug poisoning. However, this was a 6.8% decrease from the 458 First Nations people who died in 2023. And similarly, we noted a decrease of 8.4% in First Nations people who experienced toxic drug poisoning events, or in other words, we used to call those events overdoses. So we had a decrease in overdoses, poisoning events, as well as deaths.
So I would imagine, is that encouraging enough for you, or?
Well, I think it says a couple of things. One is our data also showed for the year 2024 that First Nations people died at 6.7 times the rate of other residents of BC. And this is the largest gap that we have seen between First Nations people and other residents of BC since the toxic drug crisis was declared a public health emergency. So what it says to us is that First Nations people continue to be disproportionately impacted as part of this public health emergency. But, the decrease is the first time that we have seen decreases in both deaths and events since around 2019. And so it shows us that what we are doing, particularly in the area of harm reduction, is helping.
What do you make of, what we just heard from Bob Hughes from the Ask Wellness Society, who said, yes, that is working, and that those harm reduction measures were brought in at a time when this was all so new, but there needs to be the focus on prevention and recovery as well, and enforcement.
Yeah, the First Nations Health Authority actually, when the toxic drug crisis was declared a public health emergency, I believe was the first health authority in British Columbia to have what we call a 4-pillared framework for action. And our 4 pillars consist of preventing people who experienced drug poisoning from dying, keeping people safer from when using, which includes our harm reduction programs and services, create an accessible range of treatment options, including detox and treatment centers and aftercare. And then the 4th pillar, I think, is really what he was alluding to, which we call supporting people on their healing journey. So that's further aftercare following treatment, but in a way it comes full circle to include things like prevention. We also offer programs in helping families have difficult conversations around substance use, as well as helping families deal with their grieving. And of course, above all, our focus on traditional wellness, and that culture saves lives.
And so do you see this juncture, this time where we are in, where we seem to be seeing some decline, and it's been consistent over the course of a few months? Do you see this to be a time to revisit those and to think about how we can boost and increase those supports as well as the harm reduction successes that you've been referring to?
Well, I think it's fair to say that FNHA has always focused on those four pillars that I just shared. We see harm reduction as being on a spectrum with, detox, treatment, recovery, and then going all the way around to family healing, recovery, healing from trauma. So this is not necessarily new to us. And one of the things I think that we're really going to be focused on moving forward is ensuring that First Nations people in British Columbia have timely access to all of those services, including detox treatment centers and our healing centers. So we're doing a couple of things that are a little bit different. In order to advance that, we actually purchase beds in private facilities to get First Nations people when they want to go to treatment in that self-determining way. So that they can get in as soon as they are able. But really, we're working with the system to try to improve overall timely access to those very important and life-saving treatment beds.
Dr. Wieman, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Great. Thank you for having me.
Dr. Nel Wieman is Chief Medical Officer for the First Nations Health Authority. Let's go to some more of your calls now. And Glenn is on the line, in fact, from Kamloops. And you're aware and know Bob Hughes and Ask Wellness in Kamloops, Glenn. Pardon me,
that's correct.
Penticton.
Yeah, I ran a drop-in center for the homeless and poverty community for 12 years in Kamloops, and I just recently left that. Kamloops has one of the highest per capita overdose and death rates in the province. And I see the problem as being meaningful, as everybody has thought.
Yeah. Glenn, I'm so sorry. Our connection with you just is not good enough. I can't really understand. I can't hear what you're saying. I know you're talking about something really important in terms of the disproportionate impact on Kamloops. So we're going to try and fix that connection with you, okay? My apologies. We have Peter in New Westminster now. Hi, Peter.
Hi. Okay. First of all, I don't see any progress happening. I know it's going down, but at the same time, it's like I don't see that as much from the number, like 400 and something, right, going down from last year or something like that. But most of all, I would like to say that I think the main thing that needs to be done is the laws need to be changed to be stronger. These traffickers that are selling, say, in the downtown, let's just take the DTES, right? These are the same people who are obviously selling it to like most of the people. Like they probably get the fentanyl, the heroin, whatever, like, different other drugs. They're getting it like from some of the same people all the time, right? And because it is so many people there, but still it's a small area. And these drug dealers, right, these traffickers, they know that they obviously know a lot of their drugs are going to end up killing all of these people. Therefore, you got first-degree murder, you got second-degree murder, and third-degree murder, and it's more or less like second-degree murder or first-degree murder even, right? It's like, say, second-degree murder, they sort of like know that what's going to happen, right? And what they're doing is going to kill. Murder, like end up, the people will be like, will die.
Looking at
overdose and everything like that. So
the enforcement,
definitely got to be increased. And the judges in Vancouver, I've lived here my whole life, like in Richmond and other cities and everything, Vancouver, and I've noticed like they are lenient on certain people, like say if they're drinking and driving and all sorts of things like
Peter,
that. They don't take. Oh, sorry.
My apologies. I need to jump in just for the newscast to start, but I thank you very much for your time and your call with regard to leniency. And so you're talking about not just arresting, but that process of getting to charging and prosecuting as well when it comes to drug dealers. We actually have some emails on that point. Indy writes, my 30-year-old son was murdered, not accidentally died, which is it is described as last year when he bought a pill not knowing it was fatal. It is absolutely murder, and suppliers are getting away with murder every day. Indy, I'm sorry for your loss. My goodness. And thank you very much for emailing us, bctoday@cbc.ca. Elizabeth writes as well from Richmond. These are the kinds of anniversaries that are painful to mark. Over the past 9 years, we have on too many occasions spoken about the fact that this is a health crisis, but it continues to be used as a political issue, and this is the greatest impediment to making any progress. Elizabeth, thank you as well for your thoughts. bctoday@cbc.ca again is our address, and we're going to get to more calls coming up on the 9th anniversary of the toxic drug public health emergency in BC. Do you see any progress, and what do you think BC needs to do now? We'll take more of your calls coming up after the CBC News Update, and here's Michelle Morton.
Good afternoon. Here are the headlines from the CBC Vancouver newsroom. Around 200 bus drivers and attendants contracted by the Vancouver School Board have been told their wages will be cut, as the board will stop being a living wage employer. The International Union of Operating Engineers Local 963 says these cuts are a massive blow to those workers who are not unionized. The school board says it can no longer be a living wage employer due to significant yearly fluctuations in the living wage rate. Living Wage BC is urging the board to change course. 9 years ago today, the toxic drug crisis was declared a public health emergency in BC as the powerful opioid fentanyl emerged on the illicit drug market, marking the day that thousands of lives have been lost to poison drugs since then. BC Health Minister says the crisis continues to have a devastating impact throughout the province for users, their families, and frontline workers. Provincial Health Officer Dr. Bonnie Henry says the increasing toxicity and unpredictability of illicit drugs means the province needs to continue to be innovative in its response. And police say alcohol may have been a factor in a hit and run in Surrey yesterday that left a 6-year-old girl dead. Two other children were struck by the pickup, but their injuries are not considered life-threatening. The driver was arrested shortly after the incident. In the local forecast by Environment Canada, sun and clouds for today with gusty winds, highs of 13 except 17 if you're inland, and clouds for the evening cooling down to 8 degrees. Now back to BC Today with Michelle Elliott.
Michelle, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That's Michelle Morton in the CBC Vancouver newsroom. Welcome back. You're with BC Today here on CBC. I'm Michelle Elliott. Nice to have you with us. We are live on Radio 1 as well as CBC Television and live streaming as well. Let's get back to your calls now. 9 years ago in 2016, BC declared the rising deaths from overdose and toxic drugs as a public health emergency. And we're hearing today drug advocates and public health officials marking the anniversary, asking you on the show, do you see any progress? And what steps do you think BC needs to take now? Let's take a call from Ashley, who's been waiting in Victoria. Good afternoon, Ashley. Thanks so much for calling.
Hey, hi, Michelle. I would like to say that it is not good to spend a lot of time, and I know that maybe this will come across not great, but all the time that we spend talking about it, and I know from personal experience, I help people as well. I also carry naloxone, and it's just all of the talking about it is confusing. Because it isn't changing, and it's strange. It is strange because there are a lot of people suffering out there, and it is not their fault. It isn't their fault, and I just don't know why. And it's important that we help.
Yeah. So more action. You're hearing a lot of talk, but not a lot of results.
And I think that even more politically, I don't know, but I study, I like political science, and it just feels a lot like when weed was illegal, whatever, you know what I mean? And now it just feels like they don't care. And it just feels like that's happening all over again. They don't care. And yeah. It's like this battle over like who cares more about that depending on like what province you're in. And it's not fair. It's not fair.
Ashley, thank you so much. I can hear the emotion in your voice. Thank you very much for your call. Ellie is next in Vancouver now. Your thoughts on this 9-year-long public health emergency now, Ellie?
Hey, Michelle. Thanks for taking my call. It's a very complicated issue, and I don't think that there's necessarily one solution to solve the entire crisis. People who use drugs are in every segment of our society, and so there's not necessarily one solution that will work for everyone. But one thing I think we really do need to address are material needs. And what I mean by that is like housing, security, food, I work in the downtown east side, and I see people through my work who go to detox. They're really excited about going to detox. But then when they get out, like a month or so later, they have nowhere to go. They have no housing. So what do? They go back to their community where they have friends in the downtown east side. And before long, they're using again. So I really think a lot of these overdoses are deaths of despair, and we're just not taking care of like our fellow humans and our neighbors. So, there's a lot of approaches, but I think taking care of people's material needs and making sure that everyone is housed is definitely one of the most crucial ones.
Housing, absolutely. We've heard that from many experts and study after study as well, Ellie. Thank you so much for bringing that up. That's Ellie in Vancouver. John is up next now in Burnaby. And so, what are your thoughts on whether there has been any progress made? What should BC do now when it comes to toxic drug deaths, John?
Hey there. Yeah, thanks for taking my call. Yeah, I kind of have more of a question or statement here. Everything I've read about this 4-pillar approach that, a lot of our policy is based on shows that it is effective. However, a lot of what I've read that's been going on the last 9 years and what I've been seeing is that we're really only funding the safe drug supply, that 1-pillar aspect, and a little bit of supportive housing. But other than that, I kind of question how this 4-pillar is going to work. 4-pillar approach is going to work if we're really only supporting and funding 2 of the 4 pillars, and I think everything I've read has showcased that, it is successful. However, we have to have kind of an equal support of all 4 of the pillars that this approach is based on. And then other statement I just wanted to make was, I think in order to really kind of tackle this thing properly is we have to get the public and, the larger population in Vancouver here really back into wanting to support this issue. I think a lot of people are really frustrated in the downtown east side, especially when they kind of go back home after a day's work or whatever, and they see that this problem is still here, and it almost looks like it's been worse for the last 25 years. Nothing's really changed. And it's sad. I think a lot of people want to help, but there's a lot of frustration there too. So, I don't have an answer. I just kind of want to make that statement, and I'm a fan of the show, so thanks for taking my call.
Well, thank you very much, John. That goes back to what we heard from Bob, right? That kind of whether people get jaded because they feel they don't see results or progress. Mary is our final caller on this. Let's go back to Kamloops now. Hi, Mary.
Hi, how are you?
I am fine. Thanks for calling. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Just first of all, I did lose my brother to the drug overdose, and he struggled with it for so many years, and he had all the help put in place to help him, but it was just a battle he couldn't battle. He just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering, do they put any training in the schools that they could actually start with training and letting the kids know the long-term effect of this? And then maybe this could maybe be a branch off for some kids beforehand, before they would get involved in this.
Absolutely.
But,
yeah.
My brother went to NA, and he was there. He actually was clean for 2 years, and we went to one of his NA meetings. And I wish everybody could go to an NA meeting, because it would change their outlook on what they think a drug addict is. Because drug addicts are brothers, they're our sisters, they're our mothers, our fathers, family, and we have to do more. And I don't know, everything's such a mess. I don't even know where you even start with all this. So that I just wanted to say.
Yeah, Mary, thank you so much, and I'm so sorry for your loss. But I think when it comes to what you just said there, that was a point, a really salient point, which is that education. And when we talk about prevention, what is the education that's being put in place as early as high school? Yeah, a really good point. And on to your last point there, in terms of people who are substance users are in our lives. Palinka writes, it's important to remember addicts are not separate from all of us. They are us. Everyone is part of a community or a family or friends. Stigma is huge, and addicts, myself included, are criticized as being defective when we are not. Suffering, yes, but not defective. It is largely trauma response survival mode. We need to have compassion and empathy. That's a good point to end on, Palinka. Thank you very much. And Mary, thank you for your call as well. You can keep emailing us your thoughts, bctoday@cbc.ca. Much more coverage on this, of course, throughout the day here on CBC. 9 years since the public health emergency over toxic drugs was declared in BC. Well, during federal elections, the Canada Elections Act obliges CBC Radio to make airtime available for purchase by all registered political parties. Now, not all parties will exercise their right to buy time, and as a result, listeners may only hear advertising on behalf of some parties, even though airtime is equally available to all. So over the coming weeks, you may hear on this program political advertising during our programming, which may sound a little different for you here on CBC Radio 1. And this airtime is made available for messages provided by registered political parties as required by the Canada Elections Act.
Oh, I can't keep up with the news.
Who can?
Take this federal election. Looked like Polyev was going to win, and now Carney's got a big lead?
Yeah, but even if he wins, we need the NDP there to fight for us.
Agreed. They got us a bunch of good stuff. Dental care, pharmacare, childcare.
I just don't want to wake up after the election and realize there's no one there to speak up for us regular folks.
Same. I'm sticking with the NDP. Sounds like we're going to need them.
Authorized by the registered agent for the New Democratic Party of Canada.
The proceeding was a paid political advertisement. Okay, calling all golfers now. I know yesterday was an exciting day for you. Northern Irish golfer Rory McIlroy joined a club with only 5 other members.
The only problem is the nerves.
Yeah. Look at the long shadows. Symbolic at this moment of the journey it's taken to get here. For all this history.
His masterpiece.
There he is, crouching on the green, because what a moment. I feel like those putts are the ones that you're on the edge of your seat for. That's Jim Nantz and Trevor Immelman on the broadcast yesterday. Okay, McIlroy completed the career Grand Slam in golf when he won on Sunday at Augusta National Golf Club. He becomes only the 6th professional to win all 4 major golf tournaments. But we're going to hear about how that nearly didn't happen in a moment. And we're going to ask you as well, what do you love about the game of golf, and how do you get over the mental part of golf? It's such a mental game as well. So you want to hear how you get over that part. 1-800-825-5950. 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. You can also email bctoday@cbc.ca. We are actually going to be joined by a golf coach, golf pro in a moment. So if you want some tips, you can call us too. But joining me right now is my colleague and avid golfer, Zameer Karim, who was just locked into that final round yesterday. Hey, Zameer.
Hey, Michelle.
Okay, so tell me what your afternoon was like.
So this has been happening for much of the last 20 years. And I've made trips when I was living in the Okanagan. I'd make trips down to the coast to meet up with these same friends that I would still watch golf with to this day. So we spent Sunday afternoon at my oldest buddy at his parents' house. They have a nice setup in their house. So just like we were 19 years old, we're now 20 years later. We're guys hitting our late 30s, and we're eating pizza and watching golf,
hanging on to his every move,
hanging on to Rory McIlroy's every move. Bryson DeChambeau, who was playing with Rory in that final pairing yesterday, as well as we were keeping an eye on Justin Rose, who played extremely well yesterday to get into that. He got into that playoff at the end, and we were also looking out for Corey Connors, who's the lone Canadian who was in the top 10. He played extremely well throughout the tournament as well, finished in the top 8. But Rory McIlroy, we were all rooting for him.
Well, yeah, and he started off with a 2-stroke lead as Sunday began, and then tell me about the roller coaster that then ensued.
So he started off with a double bogey on the first hole. So that's 2 shots for those that are not golfers. So that's 2 shots over what he expected to hit on that first hole. That it was a 6 instead of a 4. Now, for those of you that know what it feels like to get a double bogey. I had many of them.
I have a husband who golfs, so I know secondhand what it feels like.
Well, firsthand, it really hurts, and for a guy like Rory to be in the lead, to then lose that lead, he's tied with Bryson DeChambeau after that first hole. To then have to almost change your mindset. You have to attack now.
Yeah. How do you do that? How do you change your mindset?
I'm not good enough to be able to there's only one mode that I have to be able to play, but you could really see it in the way that Rory was playing. The first couple of holes, he was playing a little bit tentative, and then he started, after he wasn't leading after that second hole when Bryson DeChambeau took over. Yeah. You really saw Rory become way more aggressive. He would hit shots that you wouldn't necessarily hit if you're in the lead. You would I think it was on one hole he got a birdie on, I think it was 13, where
and a birdie is good.
Birdie is good. Birdie is 1 shot less. Yeah, it was, regardless, it was good to see Rory McIlroy just play aggressively and try, but
he somehow got over it.
Yeah. But it's high risk, high reward.
There it is. High risk, high reward. We have an email from AJ who writes, I love golf. When I go golfing with a friend, it's about having fun. No pressure whatsoever. Good for you, AJ. And he says, too bad Bryson didn't win. There you go.
Well, this was a tournament about, this is like an existential crisis within golf.
Yeah.
Rory McIlroy represents the golf establishment in the PGA Tour. Bryson DeChambeau, Patrick Reed, who also finished in the top 4, represents Live Golf and the Saudi-backed tour and sort of the politics behind golf right now.
Looking at the future, trying to look at the future.
Yeah. And these Live golfers took millions of dollars in paydays to go to Live, and whereas Rory McIlroy stuck with the tried and true tour.
And that may be where AJ's coming from. I don't know, but he was rooting for Bryson. Zameer, thank you so much. Are you playing again soon? Or?
Probably on the weekend.
Yeah. Okay, you tell us how it goes. Yeah. I overheard one of our colleagues say, I just don't get golfers walking by. We want to hear from you. Do you love golf? What do you love about it? And is it a mental game for you? How do you get past those mental hurdles? 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. Okay, we have some tips for you now. Dave Zibrick is the director of golf at Point Grey Golf and Country Club. I imagine you watched the game the game yesterday, Dave?
Yeah, we were glued to the TV yesterday. It was exciting for the whole day. It's you hoped it wasn't going to be necessarily that close at the end, but it was certainly a Masters for the ages.
Yeah, Masters for the ages. What was so significant about it? Why was there so much pressure, first of all, on Rory McIlroy?
So a lot of it is, you may have heard about the Grand Slam, someone capturing all 4 majors. They say in the modern era, which is really since, the early 1900s, he's only the 6th player to ever do it. Only the 2nd player since Nicklaus did it in '66, Tiger did it in 2001.
Jack Nicklaus, yeah.
The age that I think that Rory accomplished it in, with social media, the amount of media attention on these sorts of things is just a totally different level of pressure. So, he's been carrying that around for about a decade, and to see him pull it off, you could see the emotion that poured out of him at the end. And it was really cool and special to see.
How do you think he was able to get over that pressure and then starting the final day with a double bogey? Like, how do you get past that?
Yeah, he spoke about it in his press conference last night after that the double bogey probably freed him up a little bit. I think maybe making that mistake early, was able to kind of settle his nerves and kind of get him back into, trying to make some birdies and not protect a lead, I guess, and more go out there and play aggressive. And he made a few birdies through the middle, and then you could see when he got to the back 9, he got through 10, 11, okay, and then once he got to 13, it was a bit of a train wreck. I say for someone in a major contention, in about 40 minutes, he went from hitting one of the worst shots I've ever seen from a contender coming down in a major to on 15 hitting maybe one of the most spectacular shots ever hit on a Sunday at a Masters. So, I think, these guys have trained so hard and dedicated their lives to it. And, they have systems and processes in place with them internally that they lean on, but you could see the nerves, and that must have been the hardest round of golf he's ever played.
Wow. You talk about the nerves. Like for me, as a very casual watcher of golf, that is the most exciting part. I find the putting really exciting because, like, is it gonna veer? What's gonna happen? And when so much is riding on that one, like what that little golf ball does. How do you what's it like for people you coach?
I mean, I think it's different for everybody, right? It's, not everyone's going to experience that sort of pressure. But it could be, playing for a couple dollars with your friends out there on the weekend. And, again, I think people that can go back to having a process, having a routine, focusing on the things that they can control versus just the outcome, they're going to have a lot more success with it. And I think, the players at that level, that's what they talk about with sports psychologists and coaches and all the rest is controlling what you can control versus, trying to control a result, which really you have influence in, but you don't have any say over.
It sounds like life.
Exactly. Yeah.
So for me, I really noticed, I guess most people have noticed that increase in interest in golf, especially since Tiger Woods. That's when I had a lot of friends start the game. I kind of got into it a little bit casually. What is the interest now in golf?
Yeah, I think, the Tiger effect, when he won that major or won the Masters in '97, his first major, that spurred a whole generation. That's what got me into the game. I was 13 years old watching that, and it's stuck with me. But I think, golf has changed so much now with social media. You hear Bryson DeChambeau's name, and, he went to Live, and he's kind of become this YouTube sensation now. I think someone said he's got 1 billion views on YouTube.
Wow.
B with a billion with a B. It's extraordinary, and bringing all those eyeballs to it. And, we saw such a huge uptick of golf during COVID, and people have stuck with it. They haven't left the game. And I think you're seeing a lot more, young people come to the game, a lot more women. It's a lot more diverse on the people who are taking up and sticking with the game. And it's fantastic to see. So, you hope an event like this and, Rory winning it, who's certainly, one of the favorites in golf, has a lasting impact.
Well, he's certainly a name that you just recognize, from for years and years now. What about if someone is a teenager, is thinking about getting into golf? Like, what advice would you have?
I guess it depends on where they want to engage with the game, right? It's, the first piece of advice I'd have for someone getting into the game of the golf is it's something that you should enjoy for a lifetime. It's, we see it all the time with more parents than the juniors necessarily, of wanting them to make it on the PGA Tour,
Yeah.
but it's trying to make the NHL, or trying to make, a professional sport of any kind of making, right? It's so hard, and these players are so elite. But the great thing about golf is that you can play it I have a 7-year-old son who loves it, and he can go out and play with his grandfather. And I think that's such a cool thing about golf, is it brings generations together, and you can go out and compete with the handicapping system and
What
have a game.
what does your son love about it? 7 years old.
Well, I think partially because mom and dad are so into it, but when he comes to the golf course with me, it's more about going out and having fun, driving around the golf cart, having an ice cream, playing in the bunkers, that sort of thing. And I hope that when he's my age, that he still loves the game and wants to come out and play it.
Any rebuttal for anyone who says golf is boring?
I used to think that too when I was a kid. So, you know what? It does. It takes some time, and it's a slower pace, but I think there's so many other ways to engage with golf now. There's indoor golf that you can play, and it takes 40 minutes to play a round of golf doing that. You can go hit balls at a range. You can go play mini golf. There's so many different ways that you can engage with golf nowadays that there's avenues to get into it. And,
yeah,
I think if people try it, it's so challenging. And I think it's one of those sports that's really addictive, and you don't necessarily need a team to go play. You can go play it out by yourself.
And so much of it is personal. It's kind of your personal best. Hey, he's not getting 1 billion views on YouTube for nothing, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Good to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
That's Dave Zibrick, the director of golf at Point Grey Golf and Country Club.